All right, so today what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at the IELTS test, an overview, very quickly, and then we'll start with listening, which is the first part, right? So IELTS is a test that has been around for more than 2 decades, 25 years or so. Basically, we have two formats, two different kinds of IELTS tests. One is general, the other one is academic, right? So people take general IELTS for what reasons? For what purposes? Usually for?
Immigration?
Immigration purposes, right? Usually for immigration purposes. In some countries, some jobs ask for IELTS. They don't care if it's general or academic. But if you want to go to university, and usually for jobs in occupations, you need an academic IELTS. What's the difference between academic and general IELTS? That's another key question, right? What is the difference between academic and general IELTS? Any ideas? So IELTS, we have two kinds of IELTS, right? General and academic. Well, what's the difference? So if this is IELTS, and I did this for. So if you have IELTS here, so we have general and academic. Academic for universities, general for immigration. Some general purposes, like work purposes, work-related purposes in some countries. The difference is the reading and the writing parts. I'll talk about it. IELTS as a whole has how many modules, how many parts? How many sections? 4. There are the 4 skills. What it does, the test actually tests your 4 skills. What are those 4 skills?
Listening.
Okay, IELTS starts with listening, right? Then you move on to reading, then writing, then speaking. Okay. So basically, the 4 skills. Now, speaking of the order and the difference between academic and general IELTS, they both have all the 4 components, right? They both have all the 4 components. So listening and speaking, the same. Academic and general. It's the same for academic and general. So listening the same, and speaking is also the same for academic. Writing and reading, different. So when you work on speaking and listening for the academic or general, they're both the same. But reading and writing are different. Now, what's the difference? When it comes to reading, the readings are a little bit more academic, but basically by academic, it doesn't mean they're talking about quantum physics and you need to know quantum physics. No. Basically, IELTS academic test, it's all about checking out whether or not the student can survive in an academic environment. Can actually the student has a general understanding or comprehension once placed in the academic world and can make it there. Can make conversations, can speak, can listen and understand generally academic texts, right? Can write, and can read. So that's the purpose. For writing, the difference between the two tests is, how many tasks are there in the IELTS tests? 2. So for general, speaking of the general writing, we have task 1, which is letter writing. But task 2 would be essay writing. Correct? Now, for academic IELTS, task 1 is, we talked about it. Task 2 is the same, essay writing. But task 1 would be charts, diagrams, graphs. So it's charts, diagrams, graphs, basically description of these things. So this is a general look at the two tests and the difference between the two. But now we want to see, okay, how many components and what these components are all about. I need to know like how many minutes. Okay. So what happens is you wake up in the morning, early in the morning, you go to the exam session. What time does the exam session actually start? Around 9, okay? So somehow they say sharp 9, but sometimes like a few minutes. So you can usually arrive there anywhere between 7:45 to 8. That'd be a good time, because more than that, well, you need some time, right? To relax a little bit. There's a lineup usually. People are standing in line to show their IDs and certificates and things of that nature. Also, you need to, if you have some valuables or the things that you have, anything you have in your wallet, your purse, your belongings, they take them and they give you a number usually. Then you need to keep where you put in your pockets. And except for your passport, because you keep your passport, you need the passport. They need to check your face. Or it's your passport, it's your PR card, it's your identification card with a picture on it. And then, of course, you can just have a bottle of water like this without any sign. No sign on it, nothing. So that's all you can take to the exam session. Because chances are you start writing things inside. Do you need a pencil or pen? No, nothing, because they will give you pens and pencils. They don't give you pens, usually it's just pencil. And there's a pencil sharpener, somebody's standing there to sharpen your pencil. You'll be given an eraser, so all those things. So you know when you go in there, and then of course there are instructions for that day, how to be relaxed, you have to have enough sleep the night before, and all the conventional wisdom, common sense issues that of course you need to deal with. But once you enter, the test starts with the listening component, reading, writing, and speaking. Now, listening, like I said, it's the same for both tests. In listening section, you will have how many questions?
14.
You will have 40 questions. And 40 questions. How much time?
30 minutes.
So you will have, for the listening section, so let's take a look at listening. For listening, you have 40 minutes. How many questions?
40%.
40 questions. But speaking of 40 minutes, we have 40 questions. For 40 questions, you have 30 minutes for the questions. For 40 questions, you have only 30 minutes.
Yes.
10 minutes to actually answers, but basically what you do is you transfer your answers from the test paper, from the examination booklet, to your answer sheet. Okay? 10 minutes for that. 30 minutes for answering the questions. 10 minutes for transferring your answers from your exam booklet to the answer sheet. That basically means how much time do you have per question? If you have 30 minutes, 40 questions, less than 1 minute. Less than a minute. We'll talk a little bit more in just a bit about the golden rules of listening. But before we talk about that, because we're just talking about the different sections of the test, the listening section has 4 different sections itself. The listening module, the listening section of your test, it has 4 different parts or sections all by itself. Section 1 is a conversation, an everyday conversation. Section 2 is a monologue. What's a monologue? Section 3 is a conversation also between 2 or 3 people, but the context is an educational or academic. So basically, educational / academic. Conversation, like 2 people talking about a lecture, about that, or section 4 is a lecture. Ming is very good with this. How many marks for each question? 1 mark. So 40 minutes, 40 questions. 1 mark each question. So this is basically the listening section of your test. So we're looking at this one by one. The first section of the test is listening, first part of the test. The listening section, 40 minutes. 40 questions, 30 minutes for the questions, 10 minutes for transferring your answers from the question booklet to the answer sheet. How many parts in the listening section? 4 parts. We will talk about the 4th part, which is the hardest, because you have 10 questions, a block of 10 questions usually. The largest block of questions, and you have no time. We'll talk about that in just a bit. An everyday conversation, 2 people talk. It's the easiest part. Actually, IELTS starts from easy to difficult. You always start with easy questions. Some 2 people are talking, generally, about an address or a name, someone's name, or how to spell the name of a place, things like that. A general conversation, followed by a monologue, which means like only 1 person talking, followed by an educational conversation, followed by lecture. Now we'll have more on the details.